Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this work session to order on AO 2021-32 to establish a local landmark register. Let's go ahead and start with a roll call, please.
Mr. Rivera?
Present.
Mr. Weddleton?
Here.
Miss Allard? I do see Miss Allard. Mr. Constant? Mr. Dunbar?
Here.
Miss Kennedy? Ms. LaFrance? Mr. Presberdia? Mr. Peterson?
Now it's back to challenge.
Present.
Again.
Present.
Ms. Zolotel?
Here.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Thank you.
This is Miss Allard.
Great, thank you. All right, if members want to get in the queue, please put yourself in the chat or text me if you can't access the chat. All right, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the administration for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Christine Bennell with the Planning Department. And I apologize because I have the presentation up. I can't see if Chris Schutte is with us or if Michelle is there. So if they are, do either one want to say anything first or?
I do not see either of them in our participants list.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll go ahead and move forward then. How's that sound to you, Mr. Chair?
Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, one more person coming in. So I'm Christine Bennell. I'm what we call the Historic Preservation Officer for the Municipality of Anchorage. I help manage the Historic Preservation Program for the municipality, and I am also staff to the Anchorage Historic Preservation Commission. And some of our commissioners may be joining us today, I'm not quite sure. So we appreciate the time that you've given to us to share a little bit about this ordinance. It's an exciting ordinance for the Historic Preservation Commission. And while we're here together today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the who, the how, the what, and the why of this ordinance. In your packet, you have the draft local landmark register ordinance, and I believe you have the draft nomination form, the director's guidance, and then you also have the packet that came forward from the Planning and Zoning Commission with their recommendation for approval. So the who that has created this ordinance is the Anchorage Historic Preservation Commission through the Anchorage Historic Preservation Program, again, that's led by myself, the Historic Preservation Officer, and the Commission. So the Commission was established in 2006, and it was established with powers and duties. Along with the commissioners, the Historic Preservation Officer was appointed there. And then here you see just a quick list of the members. Folks you may know in our community: Jenny Blanchard, Derek Howard, he's a student at UAA in the history program. Jenny works for BLM. Bryce Klug is with RIM Architects. Mark Lamoureux is with Native Village of Eklutna. Brandy Pennington is our beloved real estate representative. Julie Raymond Yacomian is out in Girdwood. And Casey Pape is a new resident, and he's in our construction seat. David Reamer, historian, he's writing every week in the newspaper and provides a story. Connor Schur is our land use seat, and he is an architect also out in Girdwood. So that's our commissioners.
Before you go on, I just want to note for the record that we've been joined by Miss Kennedy and Miss LaFrance. Thank you.
Oh, great, thank you. All right. So again, the ordinance that established the commission as well as the program, AMC 4.60.030, gave powers and duties to the commission, and one of those was to prepare and submit to the Assembly, Mayor, and Planning and Zoning Commission for approval by ordinance a procedure for designating, without changing the underlying zoning classification, historic and cultural resources throughout the Anchorage area. Once that procedure is in place, then the commission is supposed to review applications for designation of historic properties. And here you see our website, the Historic Preservation Commission website, and we maintain that on a monthly basis, posting their agendas and different things like that. So what is this? This is a nomination process. In order to be able to create this process, we had to develop this ordinance. The process, it's a voluntary program. There's criteria for designation. We identify the types of landmarks that can be designated or nominated. The age for nomination is anything 30 years or older. There's a nomination and hearing process. The Assembly is the ultimate approver of the nomination. The Historic Preservation Commission just makes a recommendation to the Assembly. We already have a City View database, which is maintained by the Planning Department, and right now we have several properties in that database that are actually listed on the National Register that are there. So anything new, we would just go ahead and add to that City View database, and folks can search on that and find out historic information on the different properties. This is a tool for recognizing and preserving our community character. It's different from the National Register in that the National Register is kind of like, you know, this designation that says, yes, it's nationally or locally important to our history, but with a local landmark register ordinance, that really gives us the more of a tool for preserving and recognizing our community character. So why are we doing this? We want to create this process for our community. Like I said, local landmark registers are a tool. They're used throughout the country and the world, actually, and they document what is locally significant to our community. What we have that's unique to the municipality are buildings, districts, structures, sites, landscapes, traditional cultural properties, objects, and travel routes that help us recognize our significant history and culture. They're all throughout the municipality: Eagle River, Girdwood, Turnagain Arm. Again, Native Village of Eklutna. There's a picture of the church out at Native Village of Eklutna. And so those are the kind of things that we would be looking at. So it is a voluntary program. The property owner must agree with the nomination, and then if there's a district that's being nominated, 51% of the owners have to approve. If it's a property or a resource that's owned by more than one person, 51% of the owners have to approve of the nomination. And with the nomination packet, that owner approval must be included with that packet. So our criterion for evaluating, again, 30 years or older. It has to be significant to our history, to architecture, geography, culture, or it can be listed on the National or the Alaska Historic Registers. So the landmark types, I just kind of mentioned that a couple of minutes ago. There's buildings, there can be districts, structures, sites, landscapes, traditional cultural properties, objects, travel routes. We've got all of this great stuff all throughout our Anchorage area. And in the director's guidance, we talk a little bit more about what these are and how to describe them. Okay, So the nomination form is consistent with the other forms that we have in the planning department, consistent with like a variance form that somebody would fill out, and it requires the same type of information, and then information related to, what are you nominating? A building, a district, a structure. So what happens is they will bring their packet in. It'll be reviewed to see it's complete, just like we do now with other packets that we receive. This begins somewhere between a 60 to 90-day public hearing process. And then again, we need proof of ownership. We need photos of what's being nominated. What is the statement of significance? They need to make the case in this nomination packet. We need a map. And again, if it's a district or a resource with multiple property owners, we need 51% approval. Now, for places, objects, those kind of things that might be sensitive to our local Alaska Native cultures, we will not require a map. We may require an area map, but not a specific map where that resource might be. And we will not require a specific description of what it is, where it is. So for those things that we want to keep confidential, they will remain confidential, and they would not be posted online in our database. Okay, so the director's guidance, here's a copy of the front page, the draft. It's got a checklist in there that helps people, know how to work through this, and then the different steps on what happens through the nomination process. So we have gone far and wide to share the ordinance over the last year and a half. This is our website where we put all of our historic preservation projects on, and you'll see right there, this link right there took everybody into where the ordinance is, explained everything to it. If they wanted to comment on it, they could comment through the website, and we did get quite a few comments on it. And so folks had about 6 months to be able to comment on, actually about 9 months to be able to comment on the public review and then the public hearing draft. We also had everything posted on our website here in the planning department. Anybody could go in and take a look at everything. You'll see over there the draft ordinance, the director's guidance, the application, and then we had a fact sheet out there to help answer questions. We also went out to as many community councils as we could visit with. We had the COVID thing happen right in the middle as we were trying to do all of this. And so we did get to visit all these community councils that I have listed there. And then we did receive quite a few resolutions of support, and those are in your packet too. So yeah, we had a work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission back in November of 2020. They had a few questions. We answered those questions for them when we went back in January of 2021. And now we're in the work session with you all, and then I believe our public hearing is in the next week or so. So questions?
Great, thanks so much for the presentation.
Sure, thank you.
Ms. Zolotow.
Thank you. Sorry, there's some construction at my house, so I'll try to speak up. Let me know if you can't hear me. So 2 questions, if I may. Is there a fee for the application process to take advantage of this? And then could you talk a little bit more about when confidentiality would be used? I wasn't really clear on that. Okay,
so the ordinance recommends a $100 filing fee for every any type of packet that comes in here to the planning department. There is a fee. The public was halfway supportive of a fee, halfway not supportive. The Historic Preservation Commission was halfway supportive of a fee. Again, we're recommending a $100 fee. But what we thought best was to leave it up to the assembly whether they wanted to charge a fee or not. And what some people said was, well, you know, they're not going to want to nominate if they have to pay a fee. And other commissioners were like, I've heard people that would be happy to pay a fee, or even, you know, because they want to live in a historic house and they live in a historic house and they want it to be recognized. So we left it up to the assembly whether they wanted to include a fee or not. We believe you'll probably hear something about that at the public hearing. And, you know, if you'd like further recommendation from us, then let us know on that. And then again, with the confidential, currently in the state of Alaska, any Alaska Native cultural place that is deemed sensitive is not published to the public. So the Alaska Historic Preservation Office, the SHPO as we call it, their database, which they have thousands and thousands of sites that have been surveyed and described throughout the state of Alaska. Many of them are Alaska Native cultural sites that are not, their survey information is not public information. And so we would follow along with that same guideline that Alaska, that the SHPO follows.
Thank you. Chair, would you like me to jump back into the queue, or may I ask one follow-up on one of the questions I already asked?
Go ahead with your follow-up.
Thank you. So sorry to jump back to the fee. Is the $100 fee something that would make this cost neutral for the department then?
I'm gonna I think Michelle's on. Michelle, do you wanna?
So I think if I understood the question, you're asking if the process would be cost neutral. So if we don't charge a fee, we don't necessarily have an expenditure either.
Yes, that's what I was asking. Like, where's that point?
Yeah, I mean, there is limited staff review, so I don't know that it's totally cost neutral, but any real review will be happening with the Historic Preservation Commission, which are a group of appointed volunteers. And then any type of plaque or any type of material that's purchased to honor the structures would be paid for out of the Historic Preservation Fund. So there's a very nominal cost to the planning department, which is the staff time. But for clarification on that, kind of with the staffing of the Historic Preservation Commission, just because of everything that's written into that ordinance, we have about 25% of, in this instance, Christine's time, because she is our Historic Preservation Officer, dedicated towards Historic Preservation Commission as the officer. So it would be kind of included in all of that. So it's not totally net neutral, but it's a very nominal cost to the planning department.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Thanks. So it is a couple questions. One that you just spurred me is, where does the money for the Historic Preservation Fund come from? But also, you know, I'm curious why the assembly would approve these. Does it give the site like tax benefits or anything like that? Or is there some burden put on them? And what are the benefits for having, you know, say you have a home that you want nominated?
Okay, so you asked me a couple of questions. The Historic Preservation Fund was historically called Fund 740. And when we went to SAP, it got assigned a whole new number. But when you go back through history of the establishment of the Historic Preservation Program back in the late 70s, early 80s, that Fund 740 was established and protected. It can only be used for historic preservation projects, And through the years, the fund has grown and done quite a few projects. It at one point in time had about $2.3 million in there. Right now, I believe we have around 175,000 in there. So we are very careful with that fund. We use that mostly to match grants that we seek for historic preservation projects. So real quickly, case in point, I think you heard about this, maybe Julie Raymond Jacobian let you know. We will be doing a historic and cultural property survey for Girdwood. Part of that is being funded by a grant from the SHPO, and then part of that is being funded with Fund 740. And I hope that answers that question. And then the second question, why the assembly? It's because of the ordinance, the way the ordinance says, and it's back up on the screen. Prepare and submit to the Assembly, Mayor, and Planning and Zoning Commission for approval by ordinance. So the Assembly has to approve it. The procedure for designating, and then the Commission is supposed to review those applications for designation, and they're supposed to make a recommendation to the Assembly to approve the nominations. You know, I guess the Assembly could say, we'll leave it up to you with this process, HPC, to approve the nominations, if that's what you'd like to do. The Historic Preservation Commission will hold their own public hearing, because we have to notify the surrounding community council that a property is being nominated. So then what is the benefit of doing that? And we talked a little bit about it. It allows a community to recognize what we have. And we have a few historic districts right now in Anchorage. There's Block 13, which is in South Edition. There's a couple of different historic districts up on Government Hill. There's downtown has had some historic districts, potential historic districts that could be nominated. And then even with the survey that we'll be doing in Girdwood, we expect that we'll have some proposals for some historic districts out there. Now, in the long run, if you have a local historic district and the owners, 51% of the owners in that historic district say, we want to, kind of preserve this, and so, people, you need to maintain your building and stuff like that. That's one thing that could happen in the long run. But right now, this ordinance is not proposing that. It's just proposing the nomination process and then the approval process. That was probably a lot of information.
Yeah, I suppose that's good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you. So I have a few kind of nuts and bolts questions. Do we have any idea on kind of how many initial requests we think the passage of this ordinance might just garner out of the gate? And then if we do get, I don't know, a flood of applications, and I don't know what would constitute a flood or a lot, how are you planning to prioritize them? Are they just simply time-based as they come in? And do we have an estimated timeline in terms of how long we think this process will take to go from application to assembly action?
Okay, so let me go from back to, okay. So like I said, I think I showed a little bit on one of the slides here. We think it'll be about a 60 to 90 day process, because having the commission have their own public hearing, we've got to do noticing and things like that. So it's going to be a process, and which is basically no different than anything that I do right now when I'm trying to bring forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Assembly. What happens with this, though, is this doesn't go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. It'll go to the Historic Preservation Commission and then directly to the Assembly, because that's how the ordinance was written. Okay. Right now, we don't have a lot of people that are saying we want to nominate. Again, some of the types or that are eligible include resources that are already listed on the National Register or the Alaska Historic Register. Right now in Anchorage, I believe we have about 26 different resources that are listed on the National Register. About 13 of those are owned by the Muni. So we could, if the Historic Preservation Commission wanted to, could move forward and nominate the, excuse me, all the buildings that the Muni owns with the Muni's permission to the local landmark register. And then they might reach out, the commission might reach out to those other resources that are on the National Register already and say, hey, do you want to get on the local register? It's going to be an educational program and something that I believe the commission is going to be busy doing. And it won't be me reaching out to anybody and everybody around town and saying, hey, I want you to nominate something. It's going to be more of a process and a program that the commission is going to need to dig into and actually take the leadership on. Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Great, thank you. Mr. Gates?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess I was just curious about the register itself and the database to be used. I mean, from what Ms. McNulty said, it sounds like this won't be very costly to implement. So it's are just using the current land use databases the planning department uses, nothing new software and stuff like that that you need to implement it. And does this go on people's CAMA or successor program?
So we have back in 2012, we received a grant, the planning department received a grant for $25,000 to create a historic property module within CityView. And in that module, it is set up to enter the information from what we call a survey card. So the nomination form. And so what we could do is once we get a nomination in, I have the ability to go into CityView and enter a new property and the new information. What we would also do is let the assessor know that this property is on the local landmark register. And with the previous assessor, he agreed to put in an additional attribute in their database that would indicate that a property is a local landmark. So it would be those two databases, and then it would also be Hanson, which is in development services. We would let them know, and then that way if a permit came in for a property that was on the local landmark register, it would be flagged and the historic preservation officer would be notified. We already have this process in place with the exception of the assessor. And I have to tell you that I may get a call once every 6 months from development services that says somebody's come in with a permit for a national register property, and then we just talk about what it is, and then they go ahead and get their permit.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I guess that was sort of like what happens after an application's approved, and these are the places that it would be changed to the city view and notification to assessor and development services for Hanson. Is that what's changed after an application's approved? Are those all the follow-up actions?
Yes, they would be updated.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Bunnell.
Oh, thank you. And just so you all know, Quincy was with us throughout the drafting of this ordinance. So we had, yeah, Quincy was our legal department partner in developing this ordinance.
Great.
She does a
Thank
great
you.
job.
Thanks. Any other discussion? All right, otherwise, we will see this at a public hearing and deliberation and possible vote on Tuesday at our upcoming meeting. So thank you so much for the presentation and look forward to Tuesday. With that, I'll go ahead and close this work session, and I'll see everyone either in person or on the phone at 5 o'clock at the chambers. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.